hiding slash debt. When someone knocks on my door, this causes me a great deal of stress. It doesn't bring me a nice feeling, unless I expect someone, of course. As a child, when something similar happened in our house, I remember I was told to stop any activity I was involved in, either watching telly or playing, and stay silent for as long as this person, we assumed someone requesting their money back, would give up and go away. To this day, I'm still unsettled every time someone I don't expect to pay me a visit shows up to my door.
Try and keep this briefer. My story was essentially on the two words universal credit and trapped. My naivety of the social security system that I stupidly thought was meant to be there for you when you needed help in this country due to whatever reason, whether that be job loss, illness, or situations beyond your control. Sorry, the dog's whinging. Finding myself in the system, I realised that you're in a catch-22 because I was ill, so I was signed off, but I couldn't afford food. So in order to be able to eat, which I need for my mental health when I'm not well, I had to go back into part-time work, which I thought I might manage, but obviously wasn't quite well enough to be doing that. And going back into part-time work meant that I couldn't afford medication or paying council tax. So I then got signed off for my mental health and was more in debt, and back in the situation I'd been in 6 months before. So I've been a rude awakening to the universal social security system in this country.
It was the beginning of my PhD studies and my struggle with mental health during that time and the financial impact that it's perhaps having at the moment. On a scale of 1 to 10 being the thing that happened at the beginning and end of every session and something that you're expected to put into scale in terms of measuring your own complicated emotions and thoughts and things like that. Being diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, it was particularly muddy and seemed like too simple a scale for me. Hiding, and that I kept the experience secret throughout my whole treatment, with the exception of close friends and ultimately my university. The impact of the pandemic has meant that I've had to apply for an extension. And in order to feel like I deserved that extension, I felt like I had to tell them everything, which in itself was kind of a risk because you could tell them all this detail about yourself, kind of leaving yourself exposed, perhaps a bit embarrassed and ashamed as well. And they could still just say no, because universities act like a machine, an emotionless machine, and you know, details that you otherwise wouldn't want other people to know. Perhaps administrators who are going to come across your application and heads of school and things like that, faceless people that you've never met, like seeing all this fine detail about yourself, and just the financial impact of not taking time off during the time of treatment, thinking that it would save me in the long run and perhaps have an impact towards the end, and of course the unforeseen pandemic too.
Gabrielle.
Thank you. Over time, I did not really notice how the feeling sneaked in. And if I did, I tried to ignore it as much as I could. Only until a few years ago, during and after my recent study, where my life experience was helpful instead of something to feel ashamed of. Getting credits for who I am, what I did or didn't mean for other people as a therapist and as a human being made me feel good, proud, and valuable again. From feeling tiny, unimportant, to back on my feet again, empowered, and having faith again that I will find my way to do the things as I like it, like I am, not because someone else is telling me how I should act, feeling unnecessarily humble. Thank you. It touches me again.
So mine's a bit of a silly story, but it's a bit of a positive one. I think it's a wee victory over some of the stuff we've been talking about. It's kind of related to the one of my words was a cycle, and I felt that when I first moved out, and I was going back to uni and I had a job, I felt great, but like I said, one wee thing can start a cycle, For me, it was the job. I used to work fast food, and I would have to work night shifts. I would have to work long hours. You don't get paid an awful lot, and you know, after maybe a couple of months, it started to really affect my mental health. The hours I would work meant that I actually missed exams and things like that. I slept in for exams, and that obviously that just makes things worse. I started phoning in to work to get out of work, and of course that means I've got less money. It just increases my stress, whatever. But really, the worst thing about it was we had this terrible boss who was he was like a stickler for the rules. Okay, he made it so that you had to put on 30 grams of lettuce on each burger. We didn't have any scales. So, you know, it was ridiculous and impossible. And I kept getting pulled up for it constantly. That and some other things as well. But one day we're in and I'm the only person in the kitchen. You need 4 people to run the kitchen. And of course, the managers aren't helping. They're sitting in the office doing nothing. So I'm just trying to work the beef and the chicken and everything at the same time. The only time they come out is to shout at me and say, you've not done this correctly, you've not done that, whatever. And one time he comes out and he threatens me with my job and he says, I'm going to fire you if you keep doing this. This is terrible. So as soon as he went back into his office, I put my stuff down, I turned off all the equipment, I took all the beef and the chicken and all that out so it wouldn't go on fire, and I just left. I went and got a crate of beer and I went home and I get drunk.
Yes. Mine is about fear and losing. Here I am with my family, sitting and watching a Bollywood movie, comfortable and fearless. In only a few hours later, we ended up in a nightmare. A war broke out in my country and we were forced to flee. Yes, flee. Flee from our house and leave everything that was, leave everything, leave the nice lifestyle we were accustomed to. Starting a new life in a new country, having to do with less, feeling of lost, fear, ashamed, and stressed. Thank you.
Ignorance and being wise. So it's on one side is ignorance, on the side is becoming wise. That's the ignorance and becoming wise. And mine is basically when I was younger, to me, it was a norm to the way the life was. And I didn't know any different what poverty was and really didn't understand because everyone around me was in a similar situation. And because I didn't know any better, it was very difficult to compare with anyone. As I grew older and came out of poverty and secured good job, and I started to see the wider world, I had realized what poverty was, and I was a victim of poverty. And now thinking back, I wish no one has to go through poverty because it creates a very unfair world. Thank you.
Until now, I always work with pictures and music, but it's a picture this time, which has to do with one of the important things in poverty, exclusion and dignity, in my point of view. And now again, I'm going to try to share my screen to show you the picture. 1 minute. It's this one. I think when we talk about poverty, this is the basic feeling. And it doesn't matter who does this to you. Is it the boss with a job, as you told us, Aaron? Is it somewhere from social welfare? Is it a teacher? Is it the neighbor? Is it Caroline's story, the little boy? They all have their judgments on you. And the longer you are in poverty, the more you get the feeling you have a nobody. You are a nobody. And you just have to listen to the left guy. And I think that's what poverty does to you. That's the central theme: humiliation, exclusion. And it takes, it's a hell of a job to stay in touch with yourself. And Sartre has said, l'enfer ce sont les autres, which means the hell are the others. And that's what I try to teach people when I coach them. It's not only up to you, and maybe it's more up to them. It's not a story, it's a meaning.
It's called Ode to the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme, which I explained to my group was a basic income for me when it was desperately needed. I lost my dad, my best friend, within a few days of each other as the pandemic began and those left behind could not be together. I'd taken a chance, left my job just a little while before. As the pandemic went on, would my grief, a closed world, mean I could not work anymore and lose my flat when I'd lost enough already? I almost couldn't face that. But help arrived unexpectedly as self-employment income support. I had the time to grieve. I wasn't ready yet to thrive, but I could at least hold down the fort.
Thanks very much, Richard. And I wasn't going to read any of mine, but because it actually connects to something that other people have been saying, I'll just read a little bit of mine. So here goes. And with that, I had 3 patches, layered one on top of another on the right knee of my jeans. The other knee had only 2 patches. I put the jeans on and thumbed the edge of the patch. Cool. How many other kids had 5 patches on one pair of jeans? There weren't that many that had any, as far as I could tell. Who was it? Yeah, Huckleberry Finn. That's who I look like. Except those were overalls, weren't they? Still, pretty cool. Mom told me to be more careful, but I didn't really see how. Jeans got ripped, and then you patched them.